Hi guys, welcome back to Snakes and Adders Reptile Advice. Today's episode 61 and we're going to cover Savannah season. A while back we did a video in the intermediate guides which was on the Bosc or Savannah monitor, Varanus exanthematicus, and I think potentially it's worth just mentioning, you know, as keepers we're perpetually learning, perpetually moving on, trying to develop our skill sets and knowledge base, and we update ourselves based on the information that presents itself to us. On the back of the video that we produced and the fact that we'd had a few crossed swords with the superhuman Newman, Daniel Bennett came to see us, who, if anybody knows anything about monitors, wrote potentially one of the Bibles, which is Monitor Lizards by Bennett. He is based in Glossop. He's an absolutely fantastic man and took the time out of his day to come and see me and explain some of the issues that are faced by the Savannah monitor lizard, and, you know, potentially how we try and work our way around it to keep them as a viable species within the pet trade, which is going to be easier said than done now that new knowledge about their natural ecology has come to light. I've not released this as another species guide. I'm not going to do another 17 minutes monologue on Savannah monitors. So this is an addendum or an update to their care. The natural history, all that gear, that's all still as is, and you can still find that in the intermediate series on YouTube. So what is it that's the problem? Well, the problem is nearly all Bosc monitors, probably 99.99% of all Bosc monitors are imported. They are farmed, which is a very generous way of not describing them as wild caught, and imported en masse this time of year, every year. There's a massive influx of them to shops, and realistically we need to discuss their natural ecology in the mid to long term. The short term not necessarily going to pose you a huge issue, but the mid to long term is the problem, and that was the crux of the issue that Daniel Bennett had. When he explained the issues that he had, he was derided as a crank and some sort of would-be anti, which he didn't strike me as at all. Just a very passionate and knowledgeable man trying to do the best for a species he studied for the better part of 25 years. So I doubt that I'm going to do you justice, Daniel, but I'll have a go. The Bosc monitor occurs in Togo, Benin, Côte d'Ivoire, Senegal, across Africa, basically across the western forest belt of Africa. They're out on the savannas and the plains as well. These are a mid-sized monitor approaching 4 feet in length for males, 3 feet for girls. Unfortunately, in captivity, the issue that arises is their absolute willingness to consume mammals en masse. In the book that Daniel released later on with a co-author, Ravi Thakordayal, they did, I think, something like 1,000 stomach washers, and only one rodent was found in 1,000 stomachs of monitors. So they don't form part of their natural diet, and it's pretty safe to say that all that excess fat has problems, which we will get to in a moment. Predominantly, these are going to be insectivorous in captivity. We may also be able to get them to accept some egg and snails, which they'll also take as well. Snails are a good source of low-fat protein. The egg, again, you know, just for enrichment. And we'd also benefit from making them work for their food. You can get the Kong treat balls that the dogs can play with, that they can roll around and they release treats. We can load them with locusts and dubia roaches and such like, and try and encourage some sort of in captivity foraging behaviour by having to work at getting their food. The issue is that Boscs will lay on weight incredibly readily, and this puts their renal system under inordinate pressure. The mid to long term issue that I spoke about was there seems to be a massive problem with the lifespan of females postpartum. So the first time they breed and go through a pregnancy and give birth, invariably they'll be dead before the next litter is possibly born. And a lot of this has been put down to renal failure. Other things that have been suggested, both by captive breeder Liam Saville and Daniel to myself, was that there is quite a prolonged aestivation period where animals in the wild are found in a totally emaciated state, down to 5 or 8% body fat. And it was then being able to reconcile how we tell people in captivity, yes, you need to starve your lizard to the point of near death and then feed it back up again, to try and do this fat burning exercise so that we can then load them up without weight through the rest of the year. If you think this is a slightly more aggressive version of a brumation that we would put tortoises through as a fat burning process. During the period of aestivation, the males are actually noted in the wild as being semi-arboreal. So there's a lot of things there to unpack. One, semi-arboreal aspects. No one's ever discussed Savannahs and Boscs being semi-arboreal, but the males in particular are found up in trees, they're skin and bone, and they're walking around with next to no body weight on them. And even pregnant females or females that are going to be cycling for giving birth rarely run in excess of 15 to 20% body fat. So this is all interesting to me when, after 27 years of keeping in captivity, I see Boscs and they're always big and they're always chunky, and a lot of them are overweight and they're dragging their bellies on the floor, and they're sold as the beginner monitor and all the rest of it. I think moving forward, potentially we're going to have to review this and look at this again, in as much as we need to be able to aestivate them to try and keep their renal system from being under too much pressure. We do not want them to die from renal failure, which is the liver and kidneys packing in, can't process all that fat, all that protein. We need to keep them fit, we need to keep them lean, we need to keep them exercising. What you then might find is there is a trade-off on temperament, because they're not so sated by being overfed. So therefore, they certainly might not be as compliant as this little man is being with me right now. So these are things that we need to bear in mind. And when Daniel says, you know, I want to try and make sure that people understand the ecology moving forward, I want the husbandry to reflect the natural ecology. I don't want, you know, I've worked over there for 25 years. Some of the lads that I go out with hunting for the monitors, I count as personal friends. I know their children, and their livelihoods are based on the activity surrounding Savannah monitors, whether that be their collection for the pet trade or their collection for scientific study, which they do with me. So actually, if he was to come out and say he wanted an outright ban on the sale of Bosc monitors in captivity, he'd potentially be taking the food out of the mouths of the people that he's come to call his closest personal friends in Ghana. So he's in a sticky wicket, in a sticky position here. My counterpoint to him upon mentioning these issues was, so we've got a monitor that everybody pretty much sells as one of the tamest, easiest to get going monitors there is, on the basis of erroneous information of diet. What we're going to say to them is, we're willingly going to starve your animal to almost to the brink of expiration, potentially trade that tame and tractable nature for something that's irascible, permanently hungry, on it and far fitter, and that's going to affect the amount that are then ordered in from the wild, if that's the overarching attitude towards it. Now, some people will argue, well, it's tough, it is what it is. To Daniel, it's not quite as clear cut as that. The simplicity that he doesn't want to cost his friends his job. They're wanting to set up proper breeding facilities in Ghana that reflect this aestivation period and all the rest of it, and trying to replicate their natural ecology with captive animals and put females through multiple litters to make sure that their renal systems are in good nick, and they're obviously desperately trying to crack it. The crux of this is that this is far from a simple monitor, and people potentially are going to walk into a pet shop, see the babies that have come through this season at 30, 40, 50 quid and think, I've always wanted a big monitor. Come here. Where are you wriggling off to? You did dead well though, didn't you? You did dead well. No need for that, you've done well. They're going to buy that baby monitor for 30, 40, 50 quid. And then think, yeah, I've always wanted a monitor, and get one, and just feed it mice and not keep it hot enough and not give it a big enough tank. These need a huge amount of roaming space. They love to dig. In the previous video I made, I claimed that we could potentially let them dig right down. Daniel says actually that won't be necessary. The females never dig deeper than their snout vent length. The reason being, they want to be able to see if there's predators in the local area. So they'll always have their snout visible above the ground when they're depositing their eggs. So they will only dig back to their hind legs. They will not go any deeper than this. So that's another thing. The good thing is, you see, here at Snakes and Adders, we're not scared of being told, you're wrong, you didn't quite get that right. And, you know, people can be very vociferous, you know, Liam Saville particularly. I haven't got a problem with what he's saying. All he strikes me as is passionate and wants to make sure that the lizards are raised in the correct manner. And I have no problem with that. I think that, you know, potentially there are things that we can work around. It doesn't necessarily need to be extreme as the wild, but we certainly need to take stock of what we're being told about the natural ecology of a lizard that we've been keeping for 30 plus years, and potentially not quite taken as seriously as we should have, and we've never really clocked the continued breeding efforts or making sure that females can go through multiple egg cycles without renal failure and problems. Maybe we need to consider putting them through a developed estivation period where they can, where they can lose weight. We're nearly there, we're nearly done, darling, aren't we? Hey? So that's something that we all need to bear in mind, and moving forward we need to make sure that their care is as good as we can possibly provide, and don't just take them for granted, because they're a standard livestock item that you'll find in many shops. So from me and Big Bernard here, who's decided to wake up and scratch me to death, we'll see you soon, and we'll be back with another video. Cheers, guys. Oh, so you stop now? You stop now? Bloody chat.